So here I've created a new Android project, and here's the layout file. Let's build up the layout first. So in this case I'll need two edit texts and a button. So I'll give the hint as username, and I'll also give this an ID of username et, and then the second edit text, hint of password and ID as password et. Layout below username et. So yeah, and now for the button, I'll just add it manually from here. And I'll also set an on-click function to login function. Now I'll make the login function here. And I'll initialize the two edit text that I had. So now in the login function, what I have to do is I have to receive the username and password that the user has entered. Now same for the password. So we're done with the main activity. Now what we have to do is we have to create a separate activity which we will be redirected to after we log in successfully. So I've just created that already, and let me just add something to the layout so that it's unique. I'll just add a text view saying logged in. Okay, let me just see how that looks. Yeah, pretty good. Now what we have to do is we have to begin the communication with the PHP scripts that we hosted earlier. So for that, what we have to do is we have to create an async task activity. We have to create an async task class. So what an async task does is it creates another thread where it executes all its contents. So we'll be doing the same. So now I've created this class named background login, and I'll be extending it to an async task activity with the okay, and now I'll press Alt Enter and it'll tell me to implement all the methods. I'll just do that. So now it has implemented do in background for me. So what do in background does is it executes whatever you want in the second thread that the async task creates. So there are two other methods which I'll be coming to in a short while after completing this do in background function. So you can pass any number of parameters in this, and to access them you will access them as array items. So let me just create a string username and string password, and here what I'll do is I'll receive the username strings of 0 and also password as strings of 1. Now also I'll have to create a context which will be sent by the main activity, and for that I'll have to create a constructor here, public background login, and here I'll pass in the context. So context will be equal to ctx. Okay, now here's where I'll begin the communication. So now what I'll do is I'll create a new URL and name it URL new URL, and then I'll pass in the URL of our PHP script that we made earlier. So now it says we have to enclose this within try catch, so yeah, we'll just do that. And when the login URL is created successfully, we'll initialize a HTTP URL connection. And now we'll open a connection from the URL, and again I think we have to enclose, we have to add another catch statement for error handling. Then what I'll do is I'll set the request method to post. So HTTP URL connection set request method to post, and also I'll enable output and input streams both. So true and HTTP URL dot set to output as true. So we need both output and input, as we are sending the data and we are also receiving the output. Now I'll create an output stream, HTTP URL connection dot get output stream. Now I'll define a buffered writer. New buffered writer, and then the character format, which is UTF-8. Next I can pass in the post data, which will contain the username in UTF-8, and then I'll pass in the key for this one, which will be our, let me just copy this here. Instead of string, I'll pass in the actual username that the user has entered, and then we have to pass an ampersand saying that we'll be adding another parameter, which will be our password, which is equal to the variable password. Okay, so we are done with our post data, and now all we have to do is send the post data. And now we can close the buffer reader, and we can also close the output stream. So now since we have sent the data, now we need to start receiving it. So for that I'll define an input stream, HTTP URL connection dot get input stream. Then I'll initialize the buffered reader this time. And now I'll define a result variable which will contain the output of the PHP script, and also a temporary variable which I'll be using in a while loop later on. So now I'll define a while loop which will get the data for me. Now I'll append whatever data I get onto the result. And now all I have to do is close the buffer reader and close the input stream. And disconnect the HTTP URL connection. And then now I have to return the result. Okay, so now if any of this is not executed, I'll be returning null. So now since we are done with our do and background, now we have to define two other methods which I told about earlier. One of them is on pre-execute. One of them is on pre-execute. So let's just define that. I have to override them. Protected so here what I can do is I can define a progress dialog just to make things look a little better, and then initialize the dialog here. And pass in the context here, and here I'll put a title, and here let's say loading. Okay, and on pre-execute, obviously, as you have understood, executes before the do and background function executes. So similarly, we have a on post execute function, protected. Here we'll pass in the result that we got from the previous do and background function. And now what we'll check is if result is empty, is not empty, and if result contains logged in, I close the dialog and then I create a new intent to go to the logged in activity. And context.start activity logged in intent, and otherwise I'll again close the dialog and I'll put a toast message saying that toast message of whatever the PHP script returns. So here context and result, and then I'll set the length to short.show. So yeah, we are done with our background login now. Now all we need to do is we need to call the class from the main activity. And here I'll pass in the context, which is this. And now I have to execute the async task class. And here I'll provide the parameters username and password. Okay, now before running the app, we also need to provide an internet permission in the manifest file. So I've already done that here. So you can see how to do that. Now we are all set to run the application. So here's our app. Here I'll put in the test credentials that I had created earlier. And yeah, it takes me to the new activity. And now let's say I put in some wrong password. It says invalid credentials. Okay, so I hope you would have enjoyed this tutorial, and yeah, stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching.